The first thing that I want to do is to make testing a little easier, because everything we're testing here is going to be a purchasable, and I don't want to have to go fight skeletons every time we want some bones. So I'm going to make us a cheat object. I just have a copy of the gray chest here, and I've just scaled it down to 0.5 because I didn't need it to be so bulky for this. And I'm going to give it a bit of a bright color so I know it's a debug object. I've already set the collider here to be just a sphere and a trigger because I don't need it to have voxel collision on it or anything for this. And now I'm going to add a label so I remind myself of what this is. Nothing I'm doing here really matters. I just like it to look a certain way. I've just put a text label on this thing so that I remember if I'm ever using this out in the level to remove it from the game so players can't get it. Now what I'm going to do is add the collectible scripts to it so that it drops the collectibles. This script here, the script dash collectible, that one, we want the one from each of these objects. And we're going to stick them all onto the chest. We don't need the spin script because that one's just for fun visually. So if we've done that right, and we collapse these, there should now be 4 collectible scripts on here. We're gonna go just change a few settings on here. I'm gonna make it reset every 15 seconds, so if I collect it, I can get it again right away. And I'm gonna turn the lifetime to 0. That doesn't make it vanish right away, that makes it just kind of live forever, so it doesn't expire. So I'm gonna go do that on each of the other ones. And then it has an amount here near the top. I don't want to give myself so many that I can't even tell what I'm spending, but I'll just give myself like 30 and then maybe like just 3 keys or something. Okay, let's just do a quick test and see if that worked. Notice I brought the spawn points over to my work platform so I wouldn't have to fight enemies to demonstrate all this. You just go get that, except for this one enemy that I left here. So you can see I now have 30 coins, 3 keys, and 30 bones. So our test object's working fine. Let's wait and see if it comes back. Yeah, there you go. And it respawned and now I could grab it again. Okay, so we're back in the combat game again. Made our new bone collectible drop off enemies and come out of bone piles and out of chests. But now we actually want to do something to use it in the game. We need to give our bone collectible a point. So we could just make the cost of one of the weapons over here into bones. So you could just go over here to the weapon database and select one of the weapons and change its cost to bone instead of coin. Then it would cost 5 bones instead of 5 coins. And that would be fine. Like, you could do that. But I kind of wanted to show some more interesting ways to use purchasables. So over here on this platform, I have dragged in some new art that I've made that I'm going to use for the stuff I'm going to demonstrate here. And I've also dragged over a copy of one of the swords and a copy of the chest so that we can steal scripts from them. Well, that way we can just copy and paste the scripts and we don't have to go find them. Now, let's move on to some data. The purchasable database, if you have a version of this before I fix this, says that the boss chest is using this, but it's actually not. That's a lie, because Brad made a different version of this script called locked collectible container that just takes a collectible ID and an unlock amount, and it doesn't need the purchase data. I'll update the explanation on this object in the other game when I get there, but if you have a version that says this, just ignore it. It's a lie. The script that's used on the sword, this one here, says purchasable data ID at the top. We've just been using the IDs that are up here in the cosmetic and weapon database, or in the case of the potion, an ID from the collectible database. But if your object is something that can't go in either of those databases, for example, it's a bridge that you repair or a door that you unlock, then you can put an entry in this purchasable database instead. The purchasable script doesn't care which of those 3 things it is. It'll let you use any of them, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I wanted to add some new things to the purchasable data that aren't just collectibles or weapons. In order to sort of get ready for the other steps we're going to do after this, we're going to just make 2 pieces of data right now at the beginning. So we've got the first one here, we're going to call bone spike door, and I'll just make the same thing, the display name. I don't even think I'm using the display name anywhere here, but we'll just fill it out for there anyway. And the collectible data ID that we want to use is going to be bone, and we're going to make them cost 10. We want it to remove the cost on purchase, and we want you to only ever be able to own one. So this is basically going to be the data for an unlockable door or an unblockable area. You buy it one time, but each player has to buy it for themselves, and it'll stay opened after it's bought. Okay, so that's the first data. So let's copy that and then paste as a new. And the second data we need is going to be called Bone Cyclops Summon. It's also going to cost bone as the collectible data ID, and it's going to have a cost of 10. We'll do the same thing. We'll also remove the cost on purchase, but this time the max ownable, we're going to set it to 0, which means people can just buy it as many times as it's available, because we want them to be able to summon the boss more than one time, not just buy something a single time. Okay, so those are the two datas that we're going to need before the next step. So for this next part, I might kind of speed through some of it because a lot of this is just juicing, but we're going to use the Cyclops that we made previously. We just need it to be made a template though. So copy its name, hit new template, paste its name there, and hit save. So now we have a template of the Cyclops that we would be able to pull out if we went to mine and went to the templates bar. Now we need a template for the indication that the spawner is active. We're going to use a spell circle for that. So when the spawner is active, you'll see a spell circle on the ground. So I'm just going to quickly juice this little circle up. It's not going to need collision on it because it's markings on the ground. I think I had it scaled up to about 3, so we'll try that. We're going to do a few things here. Turn it black, and then we'll turn the emissive to red. We'll make the opacity 0.5 maybe. We don't want it visible in the depth pass, so I don't know if you can really see, but it takes off kind of the ambient occlusion look on it, or the sort of shading on the edges. And we don't want it to cast a shadow because again it's just like painting on the ground. So we'll shut off cast shadow, and then we want to make it so that it's mostly buried in the ground. So I just moved an offset to negative 0.9 so that when it's positioned right, it should look like this. Now that doesn't look very magical, so we're gonna do just a few things quickly to make it look more magical. These are not necessary, this is just purely to make it look cooler. So we're gonna go find the color script, which I did show this one in one of the other videos. It's just called Change Color. It's by Bradley Control Z. You select it, you make the interaction type into time, and we're just gonna need to change one single color here. We're gonna set the auto change seconds to 0.5 and the change duration to maybe 0.3. We'll include the original color and we'll ignore black. That should be right. And then we're gonna add some particles. Again, this is like not at all important. You just do what you want to do here. Make them like a red color. I'm gonna make the end opacity maybe 0.18. So we'll make the initial velocity much slower, like 0.5. The spread we can probably just set to like 1 or something. So there's a little bit of variation, but not very much. Set the lifetime to 4. Number of particles can go way down. We don't need that many. The emitter size in this case we're going to want is going to be a sphere, but we actually want a circle. So we're going to set this to like 15 by 15, but no height in Y. So that means the emitter will just essentially be round. We can leave all this. We don't need gravity. We don't really need to change any of this stuff. It's probably okay. So we're just going to hit play and just see what this looks like. So that's pretty good. I'll just flash. If I was making an actual game right now, I think I'd tone down this flashing, make it slower, or so that the pulse wasn't so intense. But for what we're doing right now, this is fine. So we do need this to be a template as well, though, just like we needed the little character to be a template. So let's go and make it a template. So we're done with that part. Now the part that's the actual purchasable. These previous two were to give us something to purchase, but this object is what we're going to put the purchasable scripts and things onto. One of the first things that's a little bit different that we haven't talked about really in these tutorials is that some things in the game you want to happen for each player, and some things in the game you want to happen just once for everybody. So this chest is not networked because we want each person to get their own copy of the chest, right? Like, you don't want Sally to take a copy and then there's no copy left for Bob. So it's not networked, there's only one. But something like this enemy, everybody wants to be fighting the enemy together. It has a little checkbox on net here. That means that it's networked and that all the players playing the game see the sort of same little guy and they fight it together. We want the summoner to also be like that, so that only one person summons the boss and then everybody can fight the boss. So we're gonna check net. That's the first thing we're gonna do. These are called tags. If you don't see it, you can open this section here up. There's many functions you can add using tags, and we can go over them in various videos, but for now, just check the net box. I'm going to change the collision on this. This is completely unnecessary, but when you're moving around objects that you might have to sort of run around, especially if they're kind of small and not square, sometimes you run into the invisible corners of the box and it feels kind of bad as a player. So in the case of a small thing like a round bush that you don't want the player to walk through, but you want them to be able to walk close to it, or, you know, a little toy on the ground or something, I just change the collider to sphere. So now the player won't run into the corners of that box and it'll act like that's the solid part of the object. The next thing we're going to do is copy a couple scripts that are in use by these objects here that deal with spatialized audio, so that if you put sound on this, the sound will fade out as you move away from the object. We're just gonna copy and paste them right on. We're not gonna do anything to them. And then we also just need a sound component. We can either copy and paste it, or we could just go up to the sound component here and hit new. Now we need the purchasable object script itself, which we can get from the sword. So we're just gonna copy it and we're gonna paste it onto our disturbing little spawner thing here. Now our purchasable data ID is not sword with Ruby. It's gonna be the ID that we set up over here. So let's go find this. This one is the spawner that we're doing. So let's grab that ID and paste that into the top of this script here. And now let's go investigate the other settings here. So we want to spawn template on purchase. So what I've decided to do with this example purchasable is spawn this monster, just because I thought that would be kind of fun. You could use this idea to summon like a big boss at the end of a level or something. So we're going to just select that Cyclops enemy we made. Then we're going to hit destroy on purchase. Now, the thing that I'm destroying on purchase is the summoner, because once the summoner has added the spell circle to the game, the Cyclopses will keep spawning like infinitely. Every time they die, it'll wait 15 seconds and there'll be a new one. So we won't need this little summon thing anymore. And if a bunch of people could all click the summon thing, then you could end up with a whole bunch of Cyclopses in the level at once, and it could be too hard. So instead, we're going to destroy this thing so that the area can just have one Cyclops. These things don't really matter. These formulas and stuff are used in UI to display stuff, but we're not actually using the UI here, so that doesn't really matter. I'd probably change this from the cha-ching sign and stuff if we were doing something a little bit more elaborate, but in this case, again, we don't need to right now. We do need to set the purchase FX to our spell circle. That's how I'm getting the spell circle into the game. Instead of putting a poof of particles when you use the summoner, it's instead going to put this flashing spell circle onto the ground. And then the last thing we want to change is the voxel indicator, because we want to show some kind of something to tell the player what they're spending. So I've just made a simple voxel object that can show the cost in bones of this thing. So we're just going to select that voxel object that I made. Let's save that, and we're going to just do one quick thing. You do not need to do this. This is just for my own sanity, but I'm just going to disable the combat enemy behavior so the Cyclops doesn't chase me down when I hit play. And then I'm going to return to game. And I've got the bones up here from my test object earlier. You can see that when I walk up to this thing, I see the cost floating above it. If I purchase it, it summons the Cyclops, and I can now fight it. And if we just wait, there's a respawn time on the Cyclops itself, so it should spawn another one. Yeah, so there you go. Another sort of interesting way you could use a purchasable. Okay, so the other object that I wanted to make here is a door, essentially. So this door, I want it to slide through the ground like that and allow access to a bridge when it's purchased. But we're gonna have to do a few things to get this one ready. We don't need to worry about a net tag in this case, because I want everyone to have to pay for the gate before they're allowed to go through it. You don't have to make it that way. You could make it network, so just one person did. But in my case, I think it would suit the game better. So we don't have to worry about that. Then the next section under transform, we're going to need to make it a bit bigger because this isn't going to be big enough to block the area we need to block it. So in my earlier tests, I think I found that about 1.67 was an okay size for the object. This object's kind of interesting because the thing that we use here is actually a placeholder for the thing that the player will interact with. So we do need collision on it, but we can just set it to be a capsule, and I'll maybe just up the height just a little bit, and then set it to be a trigger, because all this is being used for is to be like an interaction zone for the script. Because this object is just going to be the placeholder for the object, I don't want it to look identical to the object. So I could turn it fluorescent purple like I did that chest, but in this case what I'm going to do is just turn it black and then turn it gray. I think we might need to add the Gizmo script to this, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'll check that in a minute. Okay, so the next thing we're going to add is going to be the purchasable object script. Again, we can just grab a copy from the sword. The other script we're going to grab, though, is going to be the openable container script. Now, if we're looking at the original chest that was in the scene, the locked collectible container is what's taking away the money from the player, or the key in this case, to open it. And then it's giving out a message that the openable container script is receiving to know when to move the art, so to open the lid. So the script we're interested in here is actually the openable container script, because I don't want to open a container, but I do want to move the door, which is really a lot like a lid to a room. So we're going to grab that now. Now there is one little weird thing here that there's no like way of easily seeing in the scene if you're not a programmer, but the openable container script was listening for two broadcasts that are given out by the other script. You don't really need to understand what that means, but you do need to change these two fields to what I'm going to show you now. So the purchasable object script gives off a different pair of events than the openable container script. So we're going to use the ones that match the purchasable object script, which are on purchased and on unpurchased. So if you just paste those two in, then this gate will work. I know these videos go pretty quick, so by all means pause the video when you need to write something like that down. Okay, so we'll set up the rest of the script in just a minute, but I wanted to paste a couple other things on before I forget. We still need the spatialized audio hack. The word hack there is a clue to you that eventually we'll have a feature that does this thing. But for now we don't, so we are just gonna paste on that script and we're gonna add a new sound component. Okay, so that's the parts that we're gonna need on this gate. So let's open the purchasable object script back up, and we need the purchasable ID that we made, the one this time that goes with the gate, which is bone spike door. And we're not spawning a template on purchase or anything this time, but we do want to change the icon to that same little icon we made before. I made both these things cost the same, so I'd only have to make one icon. But there you go, the interaction icon indicator is there. And then in the other script, openable container, we already changed the two event names, so that's what will make a connection between these two scripts, so that when this script fires, it makes this script fire. We don't need a base voxel object. That was the bottom half of the chest, so we don't need that in this case. But we do need the part that was going to move, which was the gate. So we're going to select the same art that we did here. And because this entity is scaled, that child is going to inherit the scale when it's spawned. We don't want an offset on this anymore. The lid had an offset, and since we copied and pasted the script, we ended up with one here, but we do want an open position offset because we're going to move the gate down by, I'm not really sure, let's just do -100. And we're going to set the rotation to 0 because this isn't a lid. I don't actually want it to rotate. I just want it to move down. I don't really need to change any of this stuff. I will change the sound because the creaking wood door is kind of an odd sound. So there's a rock door slide. We can just use that. That's good enough. And we don't need a closing sound because this will never close. You're going to open it one time and it'll stay open forever. That is the goal here. And let's just go test it and see if it worked. I might have forgotten something. Okay, so we definitely need the Gizmo script because if you can see, my gate is still that gray color. That's part of why we made it that color, so we could tell that it's a separate thing. So I'm gonna stop the game again. Type in Gizmo in the script search, and this is gonna hide voxel objects and text on play. It won't hide the new one that the script spawns. It's just gonna hide the one that's on here. Turn to game. When I hit play, the pure gray one went away and this one that has the rusty tip showed up. And you can see that when we walk up to it, we see that icon that has the price on it. So we can buy it. Now, this one, if it's working right, I should only be able to buy it once. And even if I refresh the game or like stop and start or whatever, it should still be gone. So let's buy it. You could see that it zoomed into the ground and vanished there. Let's stop the game and play the game again. And it should still be gone. Yes, it's gone. Now you may ask, how do you get it back for further testing? This is a case where you can use that save data button again. So let's click on this button in the corner, and now you can see that it's back because we've erased the data that told us it was gone. But I can't purchase it again because it won't let me purchase either of these things because I don't have any bones. So that's why we made this chest thing. We can just go click it. Now I have all my bones back and I could summon an enemy, which immediately killed me because I was hurt. Okay, and I can buy the gate and test it again. So that's all working fine. It seems to be good, but let's actually put it out in the level and then run through the level once. The first thing we could maybe place is this gate. I have already made a sort of little expansion area, so I would have a place to put this gate. Didn't want to have to waste your time watching me do everything. This red wall they can't walk through, and they can't walk through the gate, so as long as it's sort of tight enough that they can't touch the teleporter inside without going through the gate, then it should be okay. And then the spawner thing we want to place somewhere over in the new area we made. You don't need to place out the enemy or the spell circle because the spawner thing is going to make those appear here. It's actually sort of meant to sit kind of close to the ground like that. So we don't need to do anything with these, but we are going to just throw out this purple chest. This is why I made it a bright color and wrote a message on it, is so that I wouldn't accidentally leave it in the level when I'm using it this way. So I'm just going to stick this test chest out so that when we spawn, we can quickly grab this stuff without having to fight a bunch of enemies. And then I'm also going to move the spawn points back. So I had them over on that platform for testing, but now that I'm actually playing through the game again, I want them back here. So we're gonna hit return to game, refresh our data just in case. We'll grab our coins and money, and we're just gonna sort of speed run through all this stuff, go all the way over to the new section that we've blocked off, and we shouldn't be able to walk through. Like, we can see it, but we can't get through. And we pay the money, it slides down. Now we can go over here to the other platform, and it killed me. So there you go, and if we just wait here for a few seconds, it should spawn another one. And if that's the case, then everything is good and it's all working. So I hope that's helpful to you. I just wanted to show you that like a purchasable wasn't just about buying a sword, that there's actually sort of interesting ways you can do it to add new mechanics to your game, or, you know, restrict access to things, or improve things, or upgrade things, you know. You can definitely have some fun with it. Can't wait to see what you make.